Alright, we are live. We have got Brian Fred playing Map, the number one seed in his region, against Chris Gogolen playing Throne Remains, which is a deck that I really hope is good. It's my favorite deck. And Brian starts Kajimi. Instead of Jakku. Chris starts Insurrection Aim High, Cytor, and the Farm Puller. Brian starts both of the new episode 9, or episode 7 icon of episode 9 effects from set 14, the Dead Speak. And First Order was just the beginning. This is you pretty much see Dead Speak in every map deck now. You don't always see First Order was just the beginning, which gives forfeit bonuses to troopers. I'm sorry, Brian started Dakar, not Kajimi. He started Dakar. It's his effect, First Order was just the beginning, that lets him pull Kajimi. Map objective, of course, letting you start any episode 7 location. It's typically Jakku, but in this matchup, Brian opting for Dakar. Chris getting Boss Nest Chambers first turn. Also has Speak in hand, so he's going to get all of his activation going on turn 1. The good start from Throne Room. Brian makes a comment about it. Chris is also going to go get out the farm with the Farm Puller. And Chris will draw. Very good start. Brian's going to use the Dead Speak to pull out the Exegol Sith Throne and pull Emperor there, most likely, assuming he didn't activate any of the pieces. And now he's also going to pull out the Blockade Flagship Bridge, using We Must Accelerate Our Plans. So, good activation start for Brian as well, and that'll hopefully speed up this game. Brian plays his Sand effect, coarse and rough and irritating. That is, again, the new version of Imperial Justice. and that stacks Phasma and Gravity Shadow. Now it'll be Brian's turn to draw. Goes up to 10 in hand. Plays Imperial Command. That's going to get grabbed by Gogolen. It's always a question in this matchup, depending on what build of the deck you think Brian Fred has. If you're Chris Gogolen, do you grab Imperial Command? Do you grab Trooper Assault? If you grab the command now, which Gogolen chooses to do you have a Strike Force in your deck that you can use to get Trooper Assault later on? And Brian takes Hux. Saves 2 and ships it back. Chris is going to dig for the Hoth docking bay. Also get a chance to try to figure out what's in his force pile. There's the docking bay. So Gogolen's saying that the Hoth docking bay was the bottom card of his force pile, and he's unsure if grabbing Imperial Command was correct, but he needed a way to cycle the docking bay back into his deck. So that was why he grabbed Imperial Command. Very interesting. I don't know what kind of space package Gogolen plays. In my throne room, I always played the home one package, and in those matchups, I always thought that grabbing Imperial Command against map was the right play. As we see Luke Rebel Scout down to the Moisture Farm, and that will allow Chris to use I Must Be Allowed to Speak to take a card from used pile, and then Cytor to deploy Luke's lightsaber on Luke. We also see just a cycling of Escape Pod and We're Doomed. That makes me think that Chris has a Hoojix in hand, because he's not trying to pull anything with the Escape Pod. And now uses Hear Me Baby Hold Together for a free shield, and gets Do or Do Not. So possible that Gogolen's not playing Sense in this deck. I would find that surprising, if true. We have seen players, notably on this stream, in the last round we saw Joe Olsen play the Do or Do Not shield despite playing Sense, and he ended up losing, I think, 6 force to his own Do or Do Not shield in the last game. Here's Emperor, who I guess Brian had activated last turn, down to Exegol. And now he pulls out Kijimi as well. wonder if that was active last turn. And Brian pulls out Battle Order. Gonna make Chris pay to drain. Brian draws up to 12. Does he want to go above 12? He did see the escape pod combo being cycled last turn. So if Gogolen plays Grimtash, it's in his hand. We can say with pretty much absolute certainty that he has a Hoojix in his hand. And we don't know if he plays Grimtash, but if he does play Grimtash, it's in his hand. So Brian will stop at 12. Chris plays out the Don't Do That Again shield just in case Brian plays Always Thinking With Your Stomach. 2 shield pulls remaining for both players. And Chris gonna pay 3 to drain for 2 at the Moisture Farm. Brian loses a non-unique Stormtrooper from hand and a lateral damage. Also from hand. Doesn't want a top deck just yet. If I were Gogolen and I had the Grimtash, I probably would have fired it off there, lost prior to the drain. So I'm leaning towards him not having it. Here's Anakin to back up Luke. Brian's going to draw with Emperor. And now Chris will draw. He goes up to 15. Draw with Emperor again. And Emperor's a nice way that Brian can sort of go above 12 cards without going above 12 cards. That he was able to go up to 12, lose 2 from hand to the drain, and then draw back up prior to his next deploy phase with Emperor. Here's Finalizer and Sure Now down to Kajimi. So that'll be a drain of 3 unless Gogolen is able to contest it somehow. Hux as well, bow pull. Brian asks for a revert that is granted, says he meant to move, and moves from Kajimi to Dakar, which allows him to activate 2 force. Still a drain of 3 at Dakar. Chris again gonna pay 3 to drain for 2 at the Moisture Farm. Brian loses 2 from hand again, another non-unique trooper, and they've shut down the main reactor. Chris is going to look at his reserve deck. Brian will also get a look at his reserve deck. We will not get a look at Chris's reserve deck. Brian going to use this once per game to take a first order trooper into hand. He gets 9s. Now we see Chris come down with Leia Rebel Princess to Jakku and Padme. And Rey. So a use pile search from Rey. $14 force for Brian, 12 cards in hand. Does he want to come down and contest either of the sites that are on table? Brian does not play Starkiller Base. He presumably does not play either of the Starkiller Base sites, so these may be the only 2 battleground sites to hit the table. And Brian opts not to drain. He plays General Pride. And Chris plays See You Around Kid to cancel his game text. Now here's Kylo from Brian Fred. That leads to a bow pull. And we've got Kylo's Saber, we've got Dr. Avazan and Ponda Baba, and a First Order Trooper for good measure. Figure after all that, we're going to see a battle from Brian Fred. He's going to play Weapon of a Sith, probably a good move. Here's the battle. Probably going to swing at either Leia or Padme. I would guess. Okay, he's going to swing at Padme. Draws a 4. And a 5. And Gogolen plays, I think I can handle myself to cancel the weapon destiny. So Padme will stick around to the end of the battle, adding her destiny to attrition. Gogolen plays Odin, he says oops. I don't think he meant to do that. Oh, right. So Chris forgot the -1 from the First Order Trooper. I forgot it as well. She's defense value 3. So she's hit, even with the second destiny being canceled. Gogolen does have an Odin to prevent her from being immediately lost. Looks like both players and the commentator forgot that Padme was defense value 3. Battle Destiny for Brian is a 4. Chris's Battle Destiny is a 2. He will also get a Destiny to attrition. He's actually going to Jedi Lev the 2, so he will redraw his Battle Destiny. It is a 4. Brian is going to close call that to make it -3, close call lost. So the destiny is a 1, and then a 4 for the destiny to attrition, and then remember Rey adds 1 to the total battle destiny. Chris has to lose 2 force to Kylo because he lost the battle. He forfeits the Stormtrooper. I guess he's going to lose the Stormtrooper and Pride. Yeah. I think he could have, if he had wanted, just lost Dr. Avazan, but opts to keep the good doctor around. The not-so-good doctor, as the card says. Gogolen's going to lose Leia. Rey's going to be left there by herself. Gogolen chooses not to drain. Goes straight to his deploy phase, looks at his destinies. Brian also looks. Now comes down with Solo to join Rey. And Cassian. Bastion, it was light side going down first with Rey, Padme, and Leia Rebel Princess. And then Brian came down last turn with Kylo, Dr. E, Pride, and a Trooper, and battled. So Chris will initiate. He passes his weapons action. Kylo is going to swing at Cassian. Draws a 2 for Battle Destiny. And he has another close call in hand. We saw him use a close call in the last battle. He's got a second one in hand. He's going to use it to redraw his Battle Destiny. This time, he draws another 2. That is unfortunate for Brian. Now he draws a 5. Cassian cancels that one. Placing Padme out of play. And the lightsaber swing misses. Brian takes a card off of the sand effect, limiting both players to 1 destiny. Chris's destiny is a 1. It's an EPOB, and that can't be redrawn. Rey adds 1 to the total. Total is a 2. And a 4 for Brian. So Brian wins the battle. Chris has to lose 2 force. He loses the Obi off of used pile, and he loses a Jedi's concentration also from the used pile. Cassian goes for attrition on Chris's side. Brian loses Dr. Evazan and Pandababa. Now, Gogolen's going to play an interrupt from the Lost Pile with Solo. See what he finds. Plays Odin to try to transport. Draws a 3 for the Odin Destiny. And Luke and Anakin are going to come over to Jakku. So that's a nice little swing. Brian drains for 3 at Dakar. Might of the Republic, Speak, and Leia of Alderaan, the first 2 off the top, the 3rd from hand. Brian's going to use his effect to put 3 cards from his Lost Pile out of play, deploying a First Order Trooper from his Lost Pile. Yes, and Gogolen points out that this has the added effect of shrinking Lost Piles for purposes of the match play tiebreaker. Brian also comes down with 9s. And Phasma, bow pull. We're going to have a big fight on our hands in just a minute. Gogolen's going to try to clash Kylo. That is successful. Here's Snoke as well. Another bow pull coming. And so Chris pulls what is, for now, his final shield. Only Jedi carry that weapon. And we see FN 2003 from Brian. I doubt Brian battles this turn. If he battles, he can't use FN 2003, he can't shoot with 9s. He actually would have been able to do one of those things because Anakin lets you battle for free. But then he would be in trouble on the following turn. He uses FN 2003 in the activate phase to prevent Luke from being able to sniper in the control phase, which is a good play on Brian's part. Anakin's lightsaber on Anakin, and Screaming Lando comes down as well. Draw Their Fire would be big here if Gogolen had it. He does not. Initiates battle. Kylo is excluded due to Clash of Sabers. Is there a trooper assault? No. Anakin swings at Phasma. And 9s is going to cancel the second destiny, so that's a miss. Nines will shoot at Han and miss. Brian's going to take his last card off of Coarse and Rough, limiting both players to one destiny. Chris draws a 5. Make it a 6 with Rey. Brian draws a 4. So Chris can choose which character he wants to lose. Brian will either have to lose Snoke or lose 2 of the troopers. He chooses to lose Snoke. Oh, and he has to lose Phasma as well. Brian was down, okay, Brian was down 11. So even though the attrition was only 6, he had to lose another 5 on top. I'm guessing he has another Phasma in hand. Brian drains for 3. Gogolen quickly loses Jin from hand, and now thinking about the other two, he top decks Leia's blaster rifle and top decks escape pod combo. Brian draws with Emperor. Brian gonna go looking for an effect with Accelerate, uses 3, and immediately says Revert. I think he wanted to get an interrupt with Pod Racer. Or a blockade site. And Chris gives him the Revert. Brian had just searched his deck with his once per game Bow Pull just before that, so no information gained. He uses Accelerate to pull Accelerate. Which makes me think he may not battle this turn. If all he wanted to do was put the Accelerate back so that he can track the 5 around, he had a way of doing that in the deploy phase that didn't involve taking another 5 out of his deck with 9 cards in it. So if he was going to battle, I think I would have searched for a blockade flagship site and left the good Destiny 5 in my reserve deck. Yeah, Brian goes to his draw phase. Honestly, I might have left the Accelerate in my deck either way. Players commenting on Brian digging for his gick. Now we're going to see a control phase sniper targeting 9s. First draw is a 6, and Brian has the option to cancel it if he wants to. He opts to let it go through. And that was correct. Nines can only use its cancel text in a battle. The Kylo cancel with "I'll finish what you started" can be done in the control phase, but Brian with the option to only cancel one of those two destinies. Han has already used his once per game, otherwise Chris would be able to play Clash on Kylo from the lost pile and beat up the Stormtrooper, but that won't happen. It's not going to make too big a difference. Chris should be able to clear the site here, and we do believe that Brian has the Gick in hand. Chris deploys Yoda, battles, swings at Kylo, draws high enough to hit him, but Brian with the option to cancel the second destiny if he cares. He may not, and he decides that he does not. Kylo with a chance to swing back now. Gonna swing at Rey. And Brian draws a 2. And a 5. And the 5 is going to be canceled, but I think I can handle myself, which Brian's going to grab. I think that's a mistake on Brian's part, swinging at Rey. I probably would have gone after Anakin. Anakin's going to swing at and hit the Stormtrooper. Chris with the option to redraw the 2, but he opts not to. Match play situation, good to keep the cards in your life force. Draws a 5 for Battle Destiny. And a 4. And Brian gets 1 draw to clear a character through attrition, and then we'll have to Gick the battle. Or not, he actually declines Destiny. Brian will have to take 2 from Kylo for losing the battle. And now Brian will presumably try to drop a bunch of characters to Tatooine. So we see the Gick. Brian's only got 14 life force, though. He cannot even activate his full amount. Does he drain here? Probably has to. Chris is going to cycle Hear Me Baby to get out Ultimatum, which is not relevant at the moment, but maybe could come into play at some point. Brian does pay 3 to drain 3. Gogolen loses Ray. Hear Me Baby. And Wisa. There's Kylo dropped to Tatooine, along with Phasma. And Brian's going to play a trooper from his lost pile. Brian recirculates. So here's where we stand. Chris, who activates everything, is paying 3 to drain for 4, while Brian is doing 5 damage for free. And Chris is actually going to play Jedi Lev. To get back Jin. Now, does Brian have Undercover Spy protection? What Brian did not have out there was retrieval protection of any kind. He really should have had Coward out. And that is a big mistake on Brian's part, not having Coward out in that situation. Could have prevented that retrieval. And we'll see if that comes back to hurt him. Drain for 4 Jakku, Gravity Shadow, PV, Imperial Command, and all from hand, and then he loses Force Push from his Force pile. That's interesting. Here's Jin. We haven't seen Isard this game. Don't know if she's maybe in Brian's hand. Brian does not have a weapon at the site, so Jin cannot be snipered. And Gogolen's going to play the battle planes. He's only got 3 force. He's going to use Yoda's once per game to relocate over there. Nice play from Chris. Chris is going to save 1. Or Brian, rather, is going to save 1. Now he activates everything. Brian drains for 3, but he is staring down 6 damage now. And this is Thrawn. And Pride. And gonna play a First Order Trooper. And that will enable Brian Fred to play Resistance with his final shield. That's likely why he didn't want to play Coward last turn, but still may have hurt him. You know, at the time that he chose not to play Coward, Battle Planes wasn't even on table. Resistance wasn't really an option. The play at that point was to play Coward. So drain a 2 at Jakku. Pay 3 to drain 2 for Gogolen, who is not going to be initiating a battle this turn. Looks like he's got enough to deploy a character to Naboo. Maybe Obi, maybe Qui-Gon. No, it's Tanith 4 going to Kajimi with Bail Organa on board. And doesn't that change things? Now both players are satisfying Resistance / Ultimatum. And the Dakar drain is capped at 2. I don't think it adds to Gogolen's damage output because it's going to be Finalizer chasing Tantive around, and I believe Brian Fred has lost his Gravity Shadow. Brian does save 2. It's possible he intends to battle at the battle planes, depending on what those 2 destinies are. He drains for 2 at Dakar. Gogolen loses Corn Horn from hand and Blaster Deflection off the top. Brian Fred deploys a laser cannon battery on the finalizer. Unless he has a way to fire that outside of battle, I'm not sure what that accomplishes for him. He is going to battle on Naboo. He uses Imperial Command to add a destiny. So he's got 7 and 2 destiny against 6 and 1 destiny. Gogolen shuffles his reserve deck. Oh, Bastion, he plays shut down the main reactor. Alright, so he's going to stop Tantive in its tracks, I guess. He draws a 2... I didn't see Brian check his destinies this turn. You know, draws a 2 and a 5. I guess Brian doesn't have a great way to search his deck, but he did manage to get a total of 7. We'll see what Chris draws. Chris is going to get a redraw. Now draws a 5. So down by 3, what does he want to do? Brian's going to lose Thrawn. Might lose Pride. Pride forfeit 5? Yeah, he might lose Pride. Now he loses Thrawn. Decision time for Gogolen. Does he want to lose 3 or lose Yoda? He's going to lose 3. Brian, of course, moves over. And Chris gets to drain for free for the first time all game. Drains for 2 on Jakku. Chris plays Ahsoka aboard Tantive 4. And there is, they've shut down the main reactor. Now, I think that the last card in Gogolen's hand is Hujix. And if indeed it is Hujix, maybe I would have played Ahsoka to Naboo. Gogolen sees that the bottom card of... that the only card in Brian's reserve deck is lateral damage, and Brian's going to pull it out. And realizing that that card is more valuable on the table than it is drawn as Battle Destiny, and Brian is perfectly fine not drawing Battle Destiny as long as he can make 10 of 4 power and forfeit 0. It's a good trade. So if Brian initiates now, he's going to win by 16. Ahsoka goes for 7. Bail goes for 5. Or he plays Captain Goddard, so power 19. The pilots cover 12, and it would be another 7 overflow. Maybe Gogolen doesn't have Hujix? He's just gonna put quite a mercenary back. Why does... Oh, Bale still adds because he's not a pilot. Okay. So, Chris does get a Destiny in space. And that means that the pilots will cover all but 2 of the battle damage. And almost as importantly, the ship doesn't die. It still seems like Brian is in position to win this, but maybe only by a couple of force. And honestly, maybe not if Yoda can clear the scrubs on the ground. So drain for 2. Moving the First Order Stormtrooper to the Boss Nass chamber is not going to get it done. I don't believe, in terms of the math. So going to deploy another one from Lost Pile. It would be pretty crazy if Chris wins this game despite Brian being ahead by 18 cards in the Lost Pile count. I think this is going to end with Chris winning by 2. Yoda should be able to clear both troopers here. Assuming that Chris has a destiny tract. He does. He draws a 5. So that'll take out both troopers. And then Chris will move Tanev away. Brian will drain him down to 2. And then Chris will drain for 4 to end the game. Chris will actually drain for 6 on this next turn. But, I mean, at this point, you know, a win by 2 for Chris, where it's pretty obvious that he's not going to have the lost pile tiebreaker. Basically means that game 2 of this match is going to be winner take all. As long as Brian doesn't win game 2 by exactly 1 force, then the winner of game 2 is going to win the match. I didn't even realize Brian Fred loses Kylo's shuttle off of reserve deck. That might have been big for him at some point if he had been able to find that earlier. Yoda's going to battle the Stormtrooper, and this should end the game. And it will. So Chris wins by 2. Brian actually wins the Lost Piles by 17. And game 2 is essentially winner-take-all. The only way that game 2 will not be a winner-take-all game is if Brian Fred wins by 1. We will see you in just a few minutes.